Rugby Championship 2022, folks, done and dusted. The All Blacks ended up getting the job done, but only just barely. It went down to the final round where mathematically any team could have walked away with the trophy. It went up the All Blacks, like I said. But yeah, we'll go through some stats and trends from the competition, any kind of particular key points for each of the four teams, and you guys can let us know your thoughts. Certainly not a scientific study. I swear I offend at least one statistician who's like a professional every time I do a stats video, and I'll get a kind of angry comment about how sample size is too small or whatever. It doesn't matter. We're just talking about rugby. We're not trying to put people on the moon, so let's just keep it lighthearted. Some stats. I love me some stats, even if they don't mean much. The log. All Blacks finished with 19 points, South Africa 18. Both sides with the 4-2 records. And as I mentioned, on their final day, if these two teams had been able to get wins, then you would have had everyone with 3 wins and 3 losses, which would have been crazy. So I think, personally, just in terms of the competition itself, it's one of the best, if not the best, Rugby Championship we've had, just in terms of the competitiveness of the competition. I know people weren't that fond of the refereeing at times, but that's maybe nothing new. I'm not sure if that reaches all new heights because of social media, or it's just the rules are that much tougher for the refs to interpret. Maybe we got higher standards. I don't know, but the refereeing stuff was certainly a big talking point. But as I said, the on-the-field stuff, really fun. 19 points for the All Blacks, 18 for the Boks, 10 and 9 for the Wallabies and the Springboks. For tries, I would say it's an interesting one that the All Blacks scored more of their tries to the forwards and the Springboks scored more of their tries to the backs, which is unusual. I guess the stereotype would be the reverse, wouldn't it? Argentina scored quite a few from kicks, and Australia was just a right mixed bag, which is kind of a theme that continues throughout the entire set of stats that I look through for them. But there you go. For Argentina, we'll start with them in particular. It's interesting to see how many points they conceded, because they conceded 203 points in the competition, 80 of them in the final quarter. So a lot of points being shipped by the Argentinians towards the end of games. I know Michael Cheika has been doing a bit of a different fitness program with the guys by not training them as hard as he would normally, because he basically said these guys, being based all around Europe and whatnot, aren't really getting a proper off-season. So he's been kind of putting them on light training work. Maybe that's making them not have the legs to go the full 80. Maybe it's just a coincidence. I don't know. But there you go. That's one stat for you. And interestingly, the Argentinians are the only side whose backs average older than their forwards. They do have a few kind of senior guys in that Argentinian backline. Imhoff and Moroni and Orlando. Like there's a De La Fuente. There's a bunch of guys in their 30s who are kind of bumping the average age up. Every other team, it's the forwards that are older, which is kind of what you expect. But Argentina is unique in that regard. They had the highest goal kicking percentage of the competition with 89%, which is phenomenal. Boffelli's boot was really on fire. But in terms of the around the park stuff, possession and territory, they had the least of the four teams. So, at times it was just struggling to get a bit of ball in hand. But still, compared to what we saw from them the previous year, I reckon the Argentinians have at least taken a step forward. First away win in New Zealand, one of those 2 wins is pretty nice. If they can just manage one more win at home, the competition would have looked entirely different for them. But there you go. That is what it is. It is the wooden spoon for the Argentinians. For Australia, like I mentioned, it's a mixed bag. There's a bunch of stuff they're kind of middling, which seems to be a theme that goes back to the last time we did a stats video and mentioned the Australians. They kick the least of the 4 sides, and it's not like they don't have the ball. They also have the lightest average pack weight of the 4 squads. So you would expect, maybe that's a stereotype of Australian packs not being that big but being very mobile. That seems to ring true with the average pack weight under the current Aussie squad. They do, though, have the worst line out in the competition. They're averaging like 80%. The other sides were 84 and 87. 2 of them were 87. So, that's obviously one area that Dave Rennie will be looking to fix. But I haven't gone through to check how many players they use, but I feel like the Aussies probably used the most players, which probably doesn't help. I think they used at least 4 hookers and multiple locks. So in terms of building that connection with thrower and jumper, maybe doesn't help. Discipline record wasn't great. They had the most yellow cards, second for penalties conceded. And then just some kind of around the park stuff like clean breaks conceded, 38 across the competition was the worst, whereas South Africa the tightest defence with 21, just in terms of being kind of, when it's a clean break, it's almost like a catastrophic breakdown, right? So yeah, that's one area where the Aussies really suffered. But interestingly, I forgot to mention with their line-out, they're actually the only squad to get, I think, a couple of like direct line-out tries. I think they had at least 2. Other squads, I think, only had 1, where they genuinely had a set play from a line-out that ended up in a try, like within like a phase. Sometimes teams, not talking about mauls, but teams go through some phases after a line-out, like direct strike moves. The Aussies had at least a couple, so that is promising. And they had the youngest average squad, not by a lot, but they had the youngest average squad of the ones used. So again, maybe that's a little bit encouraging for the Wallabies. I know it's hard to always talk about encouraging when you finished third. They wanted better, but yeah, that's the kind of old catchphrase about they're still building. So the Wallabies there. For the South Africans, on the flip side, they had the oldest average squad of the 4 that was used, and they also had the heaviest pack. So that kind of goes with the stereotype, although it wasn't that much heavier than New Zealand pack. They had the most mauls. They averaged like 10 mauls a game. I think the next best side had like 5. So the South Africans love a maul. That's, playing into the stereotype. Discipline was good. And speaking of mauls, they didn't concede any maul tries. Every other side at least conceded 1 maul try. Not the Springboks. They didn't suffer in that area. And also, man, their ability to break down is still phenomenal. They don't lose many rucks. They're always got the highest ruck completion percentage of the 4 sides. One area I guess they'll be looking to improve is their line out. It was at 84%, so only above the Australians. It's an area they usually lead the way. So yeah, like I said, that's one area. I mean, Dweba had a few misfires when he was in the squad as well, so it probably drags the percentage down a bit. But overall, I still think it could be brought up no matter who's playing. Like I mentioned when I mentioned the Australians, least clean breaks conceded is encouraging. They just genuinely... And they had the most clean breaks generated themselves. So they'll be a little bit disappointed they weren't able to generate more tries from that, I guess. But like I said, they did have the most tries scored from backs this competition, not including penalty tries and any of that. But happy days, man. The South African pack, although they couldn't chase down that margin, they needed to get the Rugby Championship at the end, will still be looking to build. I know fans give them a bit of stick for how much they are kicking, but they are kicking less than last year. And I guess it's about kicking smarter rather than just the volume. The volume itself doesn't tell you a lot. And lastly, the All Blacks. The All Blacks won the competition. They have some of their kind of typical stereotypes as well. Most defenders beaten, lowest goal kicking percentage. So those things sometimes go hand in hand. That doesn't take into account difficulty of kick. But for a long time, New Zealand fans have kind of, been looked at some of the kickers abroad who kick at like high 80s, and we've had a bit of kicker envy in that regard. So 79, like I mentioned, is the lowest of the 4 sides, but maybe that just means we're scoring out wide with the wingers. You could say that. Also, the most passes by a mile. The All Blacks had 900 plus passes. Next best team had 700. Not necessarily a great thing. Like, again, you got to take it with a bit of caution because there's been games where the opposition defense has just shut the All Blacks down and they just seem to be shoveling the ball like mad without actually getting anywhere. So passing on its own is not that flash a stat. But I'm just saying the All Blacks like chucking the ball through the hands, most offload and whatnot. And also, in terms of points scored, the All Blacks have been a slightly slow starting team, although it's kind of improved towards the tail end of the season. But I mean, if you're looking at the quarters, like the final quarter, the All Blacks are scoring almost average at 10. The third quarter, so the start of the second half, almost 9. Second quarter of the game, so end of the first half, just over 8. But then the start of the game, the All Blacks are like at 5 or 6. So yeah, they've not tended to start that well, but as I said, it's a bit of a mixed one, and sample size is small, so we can't read too much into it. Also, least turnovers conceded, surprisingly. I think equal with Argentina, but Argentina plays with less possession, and the All Blacks offloaded a lot more. So I do feel like when the All Blacks get their offloading game and confidence right, they played well, and when they were a bit shell-shocked and just shoveling the ball, they didn't look particularly good. But anyway, it's all a rich tapestry. So there you go, folks. Some stats for what they're worth. You guys know I love my stats. I mean, to me, they just kind of a representation of what your eyes have seen when you watch the games, right? So it's nice to be able to put numbers to them, even if it's not any kind of official, read a lot into it, prepared by a proper mathematician kind of thing. The stats for mine, for the most part, seem to ring pretty true. Like, South Africa kicks a fair bit. They maul it. They got a pretty tidy defense and whatnot. So, yeah. There you go, folks. Some stats. Hope you enjoyed it. Buy me a coffee. Link down in the description. Buy me a coffee. It's actually buy me a beer, but we'll call it coffee for now. Anyway, you guys take care, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.